The Football Kickoff.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Welcome along to the Football Kickoff here on OTB. An interesting weekend ahead. Arsenal coming into the weekend 5 points clear at the top of the table, ahead of playing a Manchester United team who were in good form until their draw against Crystal Palace midweek. That is the pick of this weekend's games, while Jurgen Klopp will have his 1,000th game in charge as a manager tomorrow when he takes his Liverpool team up against Chelsea. Disappointing campaign so far for both teams. So we've got a huge packed schedule of games to look forward to. David Connolly with us in a moment. OTB Sports Phil Egan is here as well. Phil, last night, how important could that feel in the title race? Manchester City 2-0 down against Spurs at home. Bit of a wobble with the form they've had across all competitions recently, and then they put in a huge second half performance. Yeah,
you were thinking at half time, if you're an Arsenal fan, this is looking rosy. And you know, he would have thought that it would be Tottenham that would be doing them a favour, even though Spurs have a really good record against City of late. And then by the end of the 90 minutes, Arsenal fans, it was normal service resumed, back to hating everything about Spurs. And City will do that to you, where you can ask Liverpool fans over the last few years, when you think that there's that bit of hope, they will come back. Now, there's still more than a bit of hope for Arsenal. They're in the driving seat. And City, I agree with what Guardiola said after the game, that if Arsenal went up against them now, they would beat them. But that second half should be encouraging, because there was plenty of energy in it as well. And Haaland back in among the goals as well. Riyad Mahrez is in good form. Jack Grealish is starting to play well. De Bruyne didn't play, obviously, but you know, he'll come back in. And Ruben Diaz is probably closer to getting back into the team as well. So there's still so long to go. And the fact that City and Arsenal still have to play each other twice, throw in the FA Cup game as well. So yeah, I think we've got ourselves a proper title race.
Republic of Ireland former striker David Connolly is with us as well. David, what did you make of City in the second half? Pep changed around his midfield a little bit, and some of those players Phil was mentioning really came to the fore when they needed a performance in that second half.
Yeah, good morning, guys. I think judging by what he said after Pep, I think he kind of I think he knew that if they hadn't had that massive second 45, they were completely out of the picture. And I'm sure that would have been his halftime team talk, right? That, lads, this is our season here, done and dusted if we don't respond. I got to say, they were probably helped by Hugo Lloris again. You know, certainly, I know for Alvarez's goal, I thought he was brave to come for the ball, but certainly for Mahrez, when they went in front at the near post, you know, for Hugo, I think he's got to be stopping it. I know it took a little nick, but I think you need your goalkeeper to make some saves there. And you go back to the North London derby, I thought for Saka's, you know, when he carried the ball into his net there. So I thought City were helped a little bit. And I think, you know, certainly Hugo Lloris, I think, could have done better, maybe on Alvarez's goal. But nonetheless, it's a typical response you'd expect from City, right? That City side with the players they've got, so talented. But I really do think the goalkeeper for Spurs needed to help them out, knowing they're under massive pressure. You need your keeper to make saves, and he didn't do that.
Yeah. Phil, when it comes to this title race, 5 points seems like a nice buffer, but things can change remarkably quickly. I think the other night here in the football show, Dan McDonald and I were looking at Manchester United potentially closing the gap a little bit more. Elisa scores a late free kick, and then it looks less rosy for them coming in. But still, the two Manchester clubs are within touching distance, and this is a big test for Arsenal this coming Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and like, what a costly 10 minutes it was for United at Sellers Park, because you know, they were so comfortable, I felt, in the first half. They got their goal, and it was a case of get the second goal, then you can take Casemiro off and just see out the game. Didn't get the second goal, and I just think they just didn't up the energy in the second half, where clearly Palace are a team that are quite fragile at the moment, confidence-wise, but the longer it stayed 1-0, then they still have a chance, and that's what can happen. Somebody spanks in a free kick from 35 yards out, and all of a sudden United are dropping points. But you could just see the deflation on the bench when Casemiro got booked, because Ten Hag knew exactly what that meant for Sunday. Look, he pointed out after the game that United have already beaten Arsenal without Casemiro, but there's a big difference with playing at Old Trafford and the Emirates. Only Newcastle have come away from the Emirates with a point, and even that, as dogged as Newcastle were that night, Arsenal could have won that game. Arsenal are just a different beast at the Emirates, and I just think that first 20 minutes on Sunday is going to be a real test for United, and not having Casemiro is a big blow. I don't think United fans expected themselves to be in a title race, but certainly the Derby win gave them such confidence. Then you're going to Sellers Park, you're thinking 10 wins in a row in all competitions sets things up nicely for the weekend, and who knows, but no, I think if anyone's going to stop Arsenal from winning the league, it's only going to be City.
Yeah, we're looking forward to Sunday's game at the moment. The football kickoff here, of course, is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport. We will have live commentary also on Off the Ball on Sunday. But you want to watch the game of the TV, Arsenal against Manchester United, the 4:30 game on Sky Sports on Sunday. Dave, the significance of Casemiro not being there, given Odegaard's form, player of the month last month as well, how big a loss is Casemiro going to be with the suspension?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be massive. I think people probably surprised, right, at how well he's done, considering the amount that he costs and his age, and people thinking, is this the right signing for them? But boy, has he proven that he is absolutely the right signing for them, and he is outstanding. So yeah, he's going to be missed, because to be honest, I mean, I don't know how you stop Martin Odegaard. I mean, that kid is so talented. His brain is on, Casemiro is creative as well, right? Some of his long-range passing is absolutely outstanding, but he's probably at the opposite end of Martin Odegaard, who's thinking creatively, and Casemiro at times is thinking the opposite about, stopping that creativity. Without him there, without Casemiro there, it's going to be a real challenge, because I can't think of a player that has stopped Martin Odegaard when he's creating. I cannot think of one. And they are so well oiled at the moment, that Arsenal machine, that, without Casemiro, it's going to be very, very tough. What you would say is, okay, United have got goal threats now, and they've got players in form, and they will score goals. There's no doubt they will score a goal, United. It's just whether they can stop, Arsenal's creativity, because Saka, Odegaard, no matter what you say, I know what Phil's saying about Newcastle. I thought Newcastle were really good against Arsenal. Second half, they really got the grips. Dan Burn really got to grips with Bukayo Saka. They stopped the threats out wide. And actually, Newcastle did very well with the subs they brought on. So Maximan and players like that. So, Newcastle showed that it's possible to nullify that with a really good defensive display. But, certainly United without Casemiro, we'll have to wait and see how they do, right? Because that'll be he's in such good form. He's going to be a massive miss for them on and off the pitch. Make no mistake. You see him at the end celebrating. The fans love him. He's demanding of his teammates. So, yeah, it's a big loss.
Yeah. Phil, Trossard, we'll wait and see what happens about potentially being registered in time for this weekend. We saw Weghorst coming straight into the team for Manchester United. What does Trossard bring? Why are they trying to sign him now?
Well, he obviously wants to get out of Brighton, and it's kind of ended on a bit of a sour note there, but he's 28, which actually is older than a lot of people would have thought, because he's still quite new to the Premier League. But this is a guy that has scored, and he scored 7 goals this season. He got a hat-trick at Anfield, can play anywhere across the front line. Obviously, that's where you could pick the Arsenal starting 11 now, but it's when they're down a few bodies or they need to rest players, and they've got the Europa League as well. Obviously, Gabriel Jesus, they didn't think he was going to be out for as long. Eddie Nketiah has done excellent. So there is that option where if they wanted to start Martinelli through the centre, they could put Trossard out on the left. He could also play in a central role, and he could play out on the right. So it's just handy to be able to bring in a player that is Premier League ready. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about a player adapting to a league. Now, you still have to worry about adapting to a new system, but you would rather that it's the system that they're trying to adapt to rather than the league and the system.
Do you think it's a good move, David?
Yeah, I do. I think he's brilliant. I mean, look, if you're looking at him from a recruitment angle, his stats this season, he's got the best stats at Brighton, right? So, opposition touches, all that sort of stuff in the box, chance creation, expected goals, all that kind of boring stuff, right? That behind the scenes, your data analysts look at. He's got all that. He tops it all at Brighton. And whatever's gone on there, we don't know. But it seems like, obviously, him and De Zerbi didn't get on, but I think he's a great signing. because you've got to look at the players that can't get in this Arsenal team. Smith Rowe, Fabio Vieira. I mean, they've got really talented players on the periphery, and Trossard coming in just strengthens that, because it means, like you say, if Martinelli dips below or he's ineffective, he could switch wings sometimes. Saka could go on the left. He could have Trossard on the right. He still then has inverted wingers, if you get what I mean, with Trossard on the right. So I think he's a top talent. We saw him against Liverpool. I mean, he's brilliant. 28. I think it's a great signing. I think it's so money well spent. Really, really good money well spent.
All right, Phil, what are you expecting at the Emirates then? Because we got a feeling this was going to be a really important 7 days in Arsenal season, to have to go to Spurs and then to play Manchester United at home after that. What are you expecting Sunday?
I'm expecting a humdinger of a game, which is great, because you think back to those famous Arsenal-Manchester United games and they were brilliant, and the fact that the atmosphere at the Emirates now, I mean, how quickly it has turned, it's electric, and Arsenal fans will be expecting to rock up on Sunday and to see Arsenal put on a show and take United apart. So I think if you're United, you have to get through the first 20 minutes, and I know that's what tends to happen in these big games. If you're the away team, you just have to weather that early storm, and I think Arsenal are going to come out very quickly. And the difference with playing Arsenal and playing City at the moment is Arsenal have that zip about them, where Fred, for example, man-marked De Bruyne. De Bruyne got away from him a few times. If they're going to put Fred on Odegaard, I don't think he'd be able to marshal him the way he did with De Bruyne. Arsenal are just, if you look at it, everything is just so quick at the moment. So that first 20 minutes is going to be electric. And as I said, if United can get through it and play their way into the game, they have a chance. And maybe, like the Newcastle game I mentioned, Arsenal started very quick in that game, didn't get the breakthrough, and then you see it on the sideline. Arteta gets frustrated at times. He's a very excitable person, but I would still be leaning towards Arsenal if you're going to ask me who's going to win it. All
right, David. United and Arsenal winning their important derbies last weekend. Who's coming out on top on Sunday?
I think Arsenal. I think what he does in terms of who he plays instead of Casemiro, you'd imagine it would be Scott McTominay. I think his last start was against Charlton, wasn't it, in the FA Cup? And I really like Scott, but he's come on for a couple of minutes here and there to drop him in. I don't know if he's had enough football, but obviously big boots to fill. But I guess that would be the natural change. I can only see Arsenal winning this. The form they're in, it's a home win for me.
All right, well, David, tomorrow BT Sport, two teams we didn't expect to be in the positions they are in mid-table right now, in Liverpool and Chelsea. As I mentioned up, Jurgen Klopp's 1,000th game as a manager. These teams couldn't be separated last year. 2 draws in the league, and both the cup finals went to penalties, with Liverpool coming out on top. Liverpool, though, when we look at Klopp's CV with the games he's played, he says the worst game he had as a manager was last week, the performance he saw from Liverpool against Brighton. They bounced back midweek. They got that win against Wolves in the replay in the FA Cup. But if Liverpool are in the rag order that they were last weekend, they're probably going to struggle against Chelsea.
They probably are. Gakpo coming in is kind of... The Brighton performance didn't make sense because the formation that he played is a formation that he hasn't really played that much. If you look at a lot of the other teams, Arsenal don't deviate from how they play. Manchester City don't deviate from how they play. And it just seems like Jurgen Klopp, searching, scratching around for a performance and a formula to fit everyone in. He played the diamond against Brighton, who absolutely, crucified them. And it didn't work. So what he does here against Chelsea will be interesting, whether he goes back to his usual shape, whether he sacrifices Gakpo, I don't know. But I don't think he would have learned that experiment against Brighton was a costly one. And I don't think he'll make the same mistake against Chelsea. They do concede, don't they? So I think Chelsea know that, they might get a chance, they might score. But I still think Liverpool come out on top. But I think the experiment against Brighton was a bad one. And it was smacked of a bit of naivety, because you wouldn't have seen that from a Guardiola. You wouldn't have seen that from an Arteta this season. And maybe that's, under pressure, searching for a performance and points. You do something which really you're not really sure is going to work. And that was a bad performance. And it was a bad decision from Jurgen Klopp to play that way against Brighton.
Yeah, Liverpool's approach, but also just to pick up on the point David made about the goals that are being conceded. So that was the first clean sheet midweek. Caoimhín Kelleher was in goal in 7 that Liverpool have kept across all competitions. I think he's kept 2 clean sheets in the last 12 as it worked out. So Liverpool are conceding goals all over the place right now.
Yeah, and they're so predictable, the kind of goals they're conceding. It's the same thing the whole time, where the opposition midfielder has so much time they could pull up a chair, sit down and have a look at what pass they want to pick. They're elite footballers. You can't give them that much time. Liverpool are still trying to play a high line. So you could tell from the first 15 minutes of that game last weekend that Liverpool were going to struggle. And I know he tried to change up the formation a bit. He tried to tweak it, but he's still playing the same personnel that keep letting him down this season. And I think Liverpool going into the Wolves game, when Liverpool fans saw the team for the Wolves game, yeah, there was young players in there, but some of the Liverpool fans just thought, you know what, at least it's something different. And if they lose, at least it's something different. And it turns out they won. And the bright sparks to take from the game were an 18-year-old in Stefan Bajcetic playing in the role that Fabinho plays, but he is so much more mobile. Fabinho came on at Molineux and I think 3 or 4 times just booted the ball out. I don't know, like that
he didn't look out of place. Ben Dokas looked out of place.
No.
There's an argument to give these guys a bit of a run.
Naby Keita had a good game. Obviously Thiago, like somehow seems to split opinions. I don't get it. I mean, he was by far Liverpool's best midfielder. He's the only one winning tackles. That's not even he's not meant to be doing that. He's meant to be the one on the ball doing the good stuff, and then there's 2 lads around them that get him the ball and he controls the game. But Jordan Henderson and Fabinho haven't been able to do it this season. Harvey Elliott played in a more advanced role. That guy has been getting absolutely slated because he's been playing in a role that doesn't suit him. And, you know, if you're only a kid and you're getting thrown out to that every week, then it's going to affect your confidence. But if Klopp goes back to the same 11 that started against Brighton and they go and lose to Chelsea, then you'd be thinking, what was the point of the Wolves game? Did you not pick up anything from it?
At Chelsea, towards £500 million that's been spent under Todd Bowley already. More heavy recruitment, including Mudryk, who finally had his move to Chelsea confirmed last weekend. Bizarrely enough, confirming it while they were playing last Sunday. Kai Havertz is going to be missing, it seems, this weekend because he wasn't able to train midweek. So we'll see what happens on the selection on that one. But what does Mudryk bring to Chelsea now?
That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of money. They've got a few players out of contract, which is probably why they're lining these lads up. Jorginho's out. Kante's out. So I think this is supplementing the squad, knowing that there's probably going to be a few departures. It's more attacking players. You know, it looks like Madueke might be signing as well from PSV. Who's a really young, exciting attacker, came through at Tottenham. But to be honest, I don't know at Chelsea because half the time they seem to have players, then they get rid of them. I don't see the difference with a Mudryk and a Madueke compared to a Callum Hudson-Odoi. Apart from they get these players in at Chelsea and they don't work and they ship them out. I mean, it's probably a good time to be an agent, selling a player to Chelsea with a new owner. But to be honest, I couldn't tell you if the recruitment looked scattergun. I don't quite know in terms of, are these the players that Graham Potter actually wants and is targeting? I'm not too sure. Because at times on the sideline he looks absolutely drained. He looks spent, as if the job. I never saw him look like that at Brighton. Never. And there was that. I don't know if you saw the image. I think it was last week. Where
2 heavy bags under his eyes.
Yeah. Then. Oh my goodness. I mean, that is the job, right? That is the job there in an image where, I think his first day when he was unveiled, he kind of looked like James Bond. And then, slowly, the pressure of the job or the results are just draining away at him. So I'm not too sure. I saw him against Fulham and I thought they were really, really poor. I watched that game closely. I thought they were really, really disappointing. The games prior to the Palace one, they weren't playing at their best. They didn't play well against Palace either. So to be honest, I think Liverpool, I think they'll beat them here. But it's more in terms of our Chelsea with all their signings. It's hard to know whether any of these signings are going to be a success because, it just seems like their turnover is so big. Their turnover of players, you just wonder in a couple of seasons these players will probably be loaned out and they'll be somewhere else.
Just one other word on this game is around the transfer as well. Graham Potter, we're not quite sure if it's the recruitment committee within Chelsea or Graham Potter. I'm sure he has some input along the way. But given that Aubameyang has been so out of favour, to me it seems they're crying out to get a number 9. And then Mudryk comes in. They already have Pulisic, CH. Some players are injured at the moment, Raheem Sterling. But still, there's so many players that play in the same positions. They're stocked in one area and they look really short for just a central striker.
Yeah, that is the parting gift, and it wasn't a gift from Thomas Tuchel, is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who, even when he came on last week against Palace again, not very good.
When you see him coming off and been taken off, that's no faith in him whatsoever.
In the City game. Yeah, and when he arrived, the reason it wasn't seen as big a gamble as it was because Tuchel was there and he had worked at Aubameyang and he had thrived under Tuchel at Dortmund. So you could see it kind of made sense. But as soon as Tuchel left, it didn't make sense anymore. But they're stuck with him now and they have no number 9s. Havertz has been playing in that role. Havertz is a player that at times can look amazing. Obviously he came up with the big goal to win them the Champions League, but then other times you don't even know if he's playing, and he's not prolific enough. He scored a header last week, but I wouldn't say heading is the strongest part of his game. He has some lovely touches, but they need that out and out number 9. They rarely have a good number 9. They've signed so many number 9s since, say, when Abramovich took over, and Drogba was the man. But other than that, they've had a few that just haven't really done it, or if they've done it, just for a few years and then they're gone. Like Diego Costa had a couple of good years, but they've signed a lot of players number 9.
Very good elsewhere, but didn't quite work.
Just doesn't work. Yeah, they just don't seem to be able to do it at Chelsea.
Let's skip forward then to the 5:30 game on Saturday evening. That is Crystal Palace against Newcastle. You can watch this game on Sky Sports. Newcastle still sitting inside the top 4 currently. They're right in the coattails of both Manchester City and Manchester United as things stand. 14 games unbeaten, Phil, and they've only conceded 11 goals this season. That stat is still there.
Yeah.
I know you were talking about it last week. They're very hard to break down, but Guimaraes is likely to miss a few weeks now, and he's been a crucial player in midfield and as part of that defensive unit. How big a loss is he now?
Yeah, well, the stats don't lie. They say when he's not in the team, they don't win as many games, and I mean, it looked bad when you saw the injury.
We see him on crutches in the photos as well.
But what we're told is it's not as bad as it looked, and it did look horrendous. Where, one of those where you kind of think that it could have been a lot worse. But that's the biggest surprise for me, because in terms of the defence, when Eddie Howe was the Bournemouth manager, I know he has a better squad now, and
there was definitely feeling though they played nice football but were a bit leaky.
They always conceded goals. Now, that team that he had, a lot of the back 4 that he had at the start of their Premier League era was the team that came up with him from the Championship. But they're so hard to break down, Newcastle, and they have a really good chance. The fact that we've just talked about Liverpool and Chelsea, even we mentioned Spurs, the fact that those 3 are so off it compared to what we thought they would be, this is a great chance for Newcastle to sneak in and get Champions League football, and they're well ahead of schedule. We expected Newcastle to be challenging for Champions League football in a couple of years, given the ownership and how much money they have, but this is going a lot quicker. They have a chance of silverware as well in the League Cup. You would fancy them to, I know David mightn't agree as a former Saint, but you would fancy them to get through against Southampton in the League Cup, and then you've one off game against United. I'm sorry, Forest fans, but without Dean Henderson, I don't give Forest much of a chance in that semi-final. So things are going very well for them, and they're just going to keep going, because the team that they have now, they just keep replacing certain players and they just upgrade, and it's all going very well for Newcastle. And as I said before, Palace are the kind of team that if they concede and things can go pretty bad pretty quickly. That's why I was so surprised United didn't kill off the game.
Yeah, David, that bad run of form Palace were on, 3 defeats coming into it, came to an end with the 1-1 draw at the weekend. Haven't had a good record at Selhurst Park in recent weeks here. They've kind of been on a bit of a slide form-wise. But do they take much from the fact that they got a point against United midweek ahead of what's a very difficult game against Newcastle tomorrow evening?
Yeah, I mean, certainly they would have done. Great goal from Elise, but I've worked on a few Newcastle games. I've been so impressed with them. Obviously, Bruno's injury is a bad one for them, don't get me wrong, but it means they've got Sam Maximum back on the pitch. And, I mean, if you see him coming on, you're in big trouble. I thought he was excellent against Fulham. I thought he was really, really good. And also Eddie Howe made it, the onus was on him as the home team manager. Away from home, it might be a little bit different in terms of the side that he selects, whether he starts at Maximan. But, they've got 2 good fullbacks who I think can cope, with Zaha or Elise or Eze, Kieran Trippier and Dan Burn. I thought actually Kieran Trippier was pretty disappointing against Fulham. His deliveries in the box were unusually below standard. But the changes he made, Eddie Howe, to go and win the game, that will make the difference come the end of the season where they finish. They might finish 4th because of that, in terms of bringing on Isak, bringing on Sam Maximan, really going for it, harnessing the energy of the St James's Park crowd. I thought it was excellent management, and difficult. Fulham were on a great run. Fulham were 6 unbeaten? So to beat them, they'll be going to Palace in supreme form, confidence-wise. And as you say, very rarely breached. Got an excellent goalkeeper, brilliant goalkeeper. The back four works ever so hard. Wouldn't surprise me if Newcastle nicked this as well. Yeah,
Isak coming back to fitness, which is a boost if Joe Linton's going to play a bit deeper maybe with the injuries they have in midfield. Sunday afternoon, the other game on Sky Sports is a 2 p.m. kickoff. That is Leeds against Brentford. Strongly urge, have a listen back to Adam Pope on the football show last night talking about Leeds' situation. Jesse Marsh, very much Phil, insistent that the club are united behind him, that the club are backing him with the signings they've made some very interesting signings. They had to maybe wait to use some of the summer money that they brought in this transfer window. It'll take a while probably for it to gel, but they're up against a Brentford team who've been impressive against quite a few of the big teams this year particularly.
Yeah, I've had this feeling going into that Cardiff game in the FA Cup for Leeds that if they got turned over by Cardiff, that could have been the end for Jesse Marsh. And just looking at their fixtures, they obviously play Brentford, they have Forest coming up, they have Southampton, they have Everton, they have Manchester United as well. Depending on how the FA Cup goes, they could end up actually playing United twice in the space of a week. But in the league, which is bizarre, but it goes back to the game that was postponed. But Gnonto was...
that goal midweek.
It was excellent, but he's been so good since he's come on, come into the team, and even I saw him against West Ham and he was brilliant. And he just... The fact now that he's starting to score goals where, he's always had this energy and buzz about him, but there's end product there as well. Bamford coming back, scoring a couple of goals as well. It seems like a really big game, and the fact that it's at Elland Road, Jesse Marsh needs a big win in the Premier League at Elland Road. So I get what he's saying. He's right. Like, some of these players coming in, they do need time. I think Tyler Adams has been an excellent acquisition, but they still just concede goals at times. And like, look at the Villa game is the perfect example where, there was times they were on top against Villa. They'd recovered from conceding the early goal, yet they still go and lose that game. That's a game they shouldn't have lost, and that's no disrespect to Aston Villa. That's just Leeds had enough to win that game. They do that. They were the same under Bielsa. They don't put their chances away. But Elland Road, it's finely balanced where I think when Leeds are on, you have to watch them because it's very rare there's a dull game when they're involved.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave? I mean, decent result, kind of ending a bad run of form midweek. They want to push on now, obviously, in that Cardiff victory once they get back into the Premier League. But Brentford, a very difficult opponent here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, they beat Liverpool with no Tony, and, they've shown that they can win with and without, and they're certainly not a one-man team. Although who was back in, they beat Bournemouth. Brentford's sort of my local team, so if I have a day off and I'm not working, I go there. So, they are a brilliantly coached team. Make no mistake, how they play and their results have been superb. Look, Leeds, if you go back to the West Ham game, if they'd have lost that, I don't know what it would have been like at Ellen Road. They needed Rodrigo to come up with an equaliser. I think Brentford's a really difficult opponent for them to face, because you look at maybe little old Brentford up against Leeds at Ellen Road, but actually Brentford are difficult to break down. They've got goal threats as well going the other way. This is a difficult game. On paper, a really, really difficult game, and Brentford in great form. So I don't know. Nonto terrific, Rodrigo terrific. I wonder if Brentford, they probably play a back three. They'll block it up, make it difficult. They'll play on the counter. I think this is a difficult game, a really difficult game for Leeds.
And Dave, our other game that we have on the agenda is Monday night, Sky Sports, 8 p.m, London derby, Fulham against Spurs. Spurs really needing a result after the last two defeats they've taken. The nature of the defeat against Manchester City last night and losing the derby against Arsenal last weekend. Fulham have been overachieving this season. I don't know. A lot of people are already wondering about Conte's future. Where do you see Spurs going into this game at Craven Cottage on Monday?
Well, I don't know, because Fulham, I've seen them a couple of times. I've seen them live. They're playing so well, really, really well. Another tough game, I think, for Antonio Conte. Fulham are going to have the lion's share of possession. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if Fulham beat Spurs here. Maybe the sort of half-time, the second half performance, whether they can quickly put that to one side up against a Fulham team that that they all know their jobs. I think the manager's done a great job there, Marco Silva, because you look at the signings they made, they haven't really changed their side. Tim Ream, a lot of people thought, well, could he do it in the Premier League? Leno's come in, been excellent. Even if they're missing Anthony Robinson, their first choice fullback, Kurzawa came in and was really good. They were unlucky against Newcastle, the late goal. They're a good team. Wouldn't surprise me if Fulham won this one.
Phil?
Yeah.
End of last season, everyone thought Antonio Conte has got this Spurs team into a decent space. The signings last winter window were working out well. You're going to see if he's going to be backed. Going into the season, there was a lot of optimism about Spurs. It feels things are turning a bit now. Yeah,
well, he hasn't signed a new contract, and it just looks like he just is struggling to deal with the fact that he's not used to losing. When he was with Inter and Juventus winning games, and it just, even when he was with Chelsea, the reason he left was because he was making demands and they weren't being met. And I won a Premier League, I've won an FA Cup, why aren't you backing me? But with Spurs, David touched on it at the top of the show, Hugo Lloris is a problem. Bad goalkeepers or keepers that are making mistakes, then it feeds into the defence. They play a back three, they make mistakes. Longley last night when he came on.
Yeah.
I actually felt, watching the game last night at 3-2, I think Spurs could actually score here, because City had done so well to come back, but there was still a sense that they're still a little bit jittery. But Spurs gave them a helping hand to get the fourth goal and kill the game. When you go to Craven Cottage, you're in for a game. And you think back to even the opening weekend, Fulham will probably feel they should have beaten Liverpool, and everyone thought Liverpool were below par without probably giving enough credit to Fulham. And Marco Silva as well left Everton after getting a hiding in a Merseyside derby, and everyone thought we won't see him again. And here he is, and he's got the best out of Mitrovic. David mentioned Ream. The questions were asked about Mitrovic. Can he score enough goals in the Premier League? He's been unbelievable.
There was always that feeling he would go to the Championship, score a lot, go to the Premier League, not score as much.
An in-betweener where can do it in the Championship but can't do it in the Premier League. But he's proved so many people wrong. Pereira's been excellent. You just know that on a Monday night, under the lights, TV cameras there, Fulham are going to fancy this. They've already beaten Chelsea. They ended that hoodoo. They'll definitely fancy their chances of beating Spurs. So if they do win, I wouldn't be too surprised by it. And then that just feeds into what's the story for Conte, because that would be 3 defeats in a row, and you'd be thinking, is he going to sign the new contract? He keeps talking about, like, some of the stuff he said last night after the game, where he sounded like somebody that has to accept that this is the way that Tottenham are going to do it.
And talking about the fans having to accept maybe where they are. The soundings haven't been good the last few weeks.
Definitely not. And there's players out of form as well. Son isn't the player that he was. Harry Kane is still doing what Harry Kane does. He's scoring goals. He didn't score last night, but he's creating goals. Kulusevski, really like him. Bentancur coming back was a big plus, but there's still probably one midfielder light. I like Højbjerg, but I don't think he's good enough for that level where you're trying to push teams at the very top.
David, give you the last word on this one. Are you expecting a response from Spurs?
Oh, yeah. I think there will be a response, make no mistake. But this Fulham side is they're a really difficult opponent to play against. They work ever so hard. So I don't know. As I said earlier, it wouldn't surprise me if Fulham beat them here. But look, we saw against City that first 45. In the front part of the pitch, if you keep Harry Kane trying to contain him, trying to contain Kulusevski, if Son performs, obviously that's something different for Fulham. But the way they're playing, they dominate the ball. They have a really high line. Take the game to the opposition. They're an excellent team, so it'd be a difficult one for Spurs. I'll go Fulham. They might just nick it.
Right, intriguing weekend ahead. My thanks to both Phil and to Dave for their reviews ahead of the weekend. All the football that you love is across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport this weekend. If you missed the show, you can podcast this OTB football stream is what you need there, wherever you pick up your podcasts. And of course, we're live 11:30 every Friday on Off the Ball's YouTube channel as well. Speak to you soon.
The football kickoff.
With Sky. Watch every single live Premier League game on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.